Welcome back to the Budget Gamer channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at Membrane, which is a really crazy indie physics puzzle game that may have you coming out of your comfort zone for a handful of reasons. If you have heard of Membrane or you've scrolled past it multiple times in the eShop because it just looked kind of off the wall, you're definitely not far from the truth. Starting out in Membrane, we initially see an opening cutscene which, unbeknownst to the player, actually is kind of describing the whole story and setting of the puzzle game itself. Rendered in a potentially very off-putting MS Paint style animation, we initially see a character being annoyed by a housefly, and after this fly lands on the main character, the game switches perspective from external to internal. And as that initial character intends to swat the fly, when we first see that volcanic image of the brain, we realize that he has summoned a neuron. And more or less throughout the entire gameplay, you play as this neuron as it makes its path from the host's brain all the way down to his arm. And if the initial art and animation styles, as well as the plot of trying to play as a neuron helping a character swat a fly, hasn't lost you, the gameplay itself is actually just as unique and off the wall. As stated before, Membrane is a physics puzzle game. And what this means is that while we're generally used to puzzle games that have an item or a key that we need to use in a specific way or a specific situation to push the game forward, Membrane uses its puzzle dynamic with the physics engine being the key itself. Meaning, in short, that if you can force something to happen, that's the right way to solve the puzzle, and no two puzzles will ever be solved the same way by the same people. However, back to the actual gameplay, we see in the earlier levels we're introduced to the very simple game mechanic of shooting these stackable red pellets, being able to dissolve them by shooting little yellow arrows, and the very convenient system of being able to aim around your character. And it's these three features of gameplay which really do allow you to solve every single puzzle in the game, but figuring out exactly how to solve the puzzle with only the ability to stack and dissolve pellets is definitely an incredible challenge. The red pellets you're able to shoot anywhere on the screen can stick to certain surfaces and stick to themselves. And it's this simple mechanic that allows you to build bridges or ramps to get up to higher areas, or in certain circumstances, once you get a little bit better handle on the game, it might give you the ability to build trampolines and even catapults to lob yourself and huge blocks across the screen. The gameplay though carries out in a definite systematic progression, moving from one puzzle to the next. And within each puzzle you'll be able to find two glowing orbs, which I'm guessing are like synaptic impulses. And while one of them is always going to be easier to reach, and it does only take collecting one to move on to the next area, Membrane does actually host several unlockable games depending on how many of these little synaptic impulses you're able to collect. However, reaching the second one is generally intentionally not very easy. To be able to find or grab that second orb, you're going to have to severely economize your red blocks or find some new and creative ways of navigating past the game's subtle traps. And on that note, there really are only a couple of traps or other objects in the game besides your ability to shoot and dissolve those little red blocks. Spikes in the game don't really hurt you or your main character, but they will definitely dissolve those red blocks. However, the pink acid pits that you run across every once in a while will force you to restart the level. And other than those couple of traps, there are a few objects in the game that may help or hinder your progress. Floating beach ball-like green boulders need to be used to crash through green walls. However, in some situations, button-operated spinning blocks may need to be used to get those boulders where they need to go. And while one look at any one of these physics puzzle screens could easily tell you the solution or what needs to be done in order to complete the puzzle, actually managing to get it done can be incredibly frustrating. After those couple of introductory areas that give you an idea of the game's controls, the game's learning curve shoots up 1000%. However, once you've managed to break your mind free of the idea that there's really only one way to solve the puzzle, the next time you encounter a similar situation that maybe took you an hour to solve the first time might take you 1 or 2 minutes. And it's this drastic learning curve and kind of mind-breaking of a puzzle game dynamic that, besides the initial art and animation styles, might pull a player a little bit out of their comfort zone. Overall though, from a platforming perspective, the physics engine in this game is pretty on point. Jumping, shooting your blocks, how they stick together, how they move with other objects in the screen, all of this is incredibly flawless, which leaves the burden of the puzzle solution 100% on the player. And the thing about that is, seeing how smooth the game is, the player does know that they are the only reason this puzzle isn't being solved. And though that is incredibly frustrating when you can't manage to find a solution after your first 100 times, once you finally do crash through that puzzle and finally break your mind free of the idea that one solution fits all, solving each puzzle does become incredibly satisfying, and you really do develop as a player. And in that sense, because the game is so solid and so unique and will take you a lot of time to actually beat, despite looking like it was drawn by a 2-year-old, this is actually a really solid game. But if you are a fan of the typical lock and key style puzzlers, Membrane might not exactly be to your tastes. However, that being said, if you're up for a game that will challenge you, and especially because it's on sale for 99 cents, you might want to give Membrane a try. But anyway, that does about wrap up the review of Membrane on the Nintendo Switch, so if you enjoyed the review or found it helpful, feel free to throw me a comment or a like to show your support. And don't forget to click that little bell icon when you subscribe to stay updated with the latest content. There are new and unique indies coming out literally every single day, so there's always going to be something new to find right here. But since I can only make 3 of these reviews a week, if you want a hint at which one's going to be covered next, feel free to follow us on Twitter. And if you want to help me make these reviews, I could always use another Patreon. But anyway, this has been Budget Gamer, so as always, thanks for watching.